Hello, Living Branch family. It is great to see you all once again. Thank you so much for tuning in to LBC at Your Home. Once again, we are hoping that you guys have had a safe and prosperous week. So thank you so much for tuning in. Now, we want to give a special welcome to anybody who is encountering or really experiencing LBC for the very first time. So thanks so much for checking in with us. We'd encourage you guys to head on over to our website, lbctucson.com. There you can learn a little bit more about who we are as a church. And if you have any questions or really you just want to see some of the things that we're involved in, that's a great resource for you to utilize. So thanks for tuning in. Now, before we jump into the service, I want to throw a few updates your guys' way, starting with our men's camping trip. Now, fellas, you guys know that I have been promoting this the past couple of weeks, and we are coming up on that deadline. As a matter of fact, it's going to be taking place this coming Saturday. So it's time to stop dragging your feet, get on over to our website and get yourself RSVP'd. Now, in the event you have already RSVP'd, we want to let you know that we will have an email that's going to be coming out over the next day or so that's going to provide you with those details. So be on the lookout for that. But just know, fellas, we are getting super pumped to see you guys out there. We know it's going to be an awesome time. Now, ladies, lest you think that we are forgetting about you, worry not. We have been cooking something up for you guys, and we are excited to invite you guys to our upcoming Ladies' Night that's going to be taking place March 19th, which is a Friday, at 7 p.m. Now, of course, we are going to ask that you guys get yourself RSVP'd so we know how many we can anticipate. And with that, that's when we'll send you an email that's going to provide you with all the information and the directions of where you're going to be going. Now, what can you anticipate? Well, it's going to be an awesome night of hanging out with some of LBC's ladies and even some of the people that are going to be within the community. It's ultimately just going to be a great time to connect with other people. Now, as far as the agenda, well, there's going to be tons of fun. There's going to be food and activities. Ultimately, it's just a great way to be able to sync up with other ladies in the community. So we hope that you will be a part of that. And again, we are asking for an RSVP. So make sure you go ahead and knock that out at our website. And also know this is a great opportunity to invite other people as well. So make sure you bring a friend. Ladies, we are hoping that you will join us. Well, not us like me, because I won't be there, obviously, but like us as the ladies of LBC. You get what I'm saying. But lastly, we want to go ahead and let you guys know that we are also getting very close to our morning service out at Rocking K Ranch that's going to be taking place March 14th. And just as I promoted last week, we're going to have the coffee cart out there. So we're going to have donuts and coffee that are going to be served at 9:30. So make sure you guys show up just a little bit early. And this is all in preparation as we kind of prepare for the Easter service that's going to be taking place a few weeks down the road. So ultimately, we hope to see you guys out there. Please, please, please get yourself RSVP'd, okay? That's all I have for you. I'm going to go ahead and pass things on over to Preston. He's going to be reading some scripture for us today. So we hope you guys have an outstanding service, and we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Ricky. Before our band leads us in worship today, I want to take a quick moment of your time and read a passage of scripture for you all. It comes from the Old Testament, from the book of Psalms, and it reminds us that God invites us to continually offer Him praise, to worship Him. So this is Psalm 100, beginning in verse 1. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into His presence with singing. Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him. Bless His name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and His faithfulness to all generations. The first song that the worship team is going to lead us in declares that the Lord is our God, and that He is good and that He is faithful. And just like in Psalm 100, He is faithful to all generations, which includes even us today. So with that in mind, let us worship together.
Maker, promise keeper, you finish what you began. Our provision through the desert, you see it through till the end. You see it through till the end. The Lord our God is ever silence, in the waiting. Yes, we can know you are good. All your plans are for your glory. Yes, we can know you are good. Yes, we can know you are good. The Lord our God is ever faithful, never changing through the ages. From this darkness you will lead us, and forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. Say it again. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. Yeah. The Lord our God is ever faithful, ever changing through the ages. From this darkness you will lead us, and forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. And forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. And forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. The Lord our God. The Lord our God.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness
goodness of God.
All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able,
I will sing
with the goodness of God, I will sing
of the goodness of God.
Thanks, worship team. Hey, if you were with us last week, my hope is that you really enjoyed the chance we had to sit down with our friend Jackie Wilson and just hear a little bit more of her story, and whose husband Stu was so instrumental in help pushing us forward to launch Living Branch Church. I mentioned last week that we were going to do that similar thing over the next couple weeks, and so we have an opportunity to do that today, to hear from somebody that I happen to know very well, and I think many of you as well. My prayer is that as you listen to their story and you'll see how it intersects with your own story, it might encourage your heart in Jesus. And so here we go with week 2. Hey friends, welcome again to LBC at Your Home. I am joined today by a very special guest, someone who I happen to know very well, my dear wife, Kendra Davis, and we are joining you today from our home. And so this really feels like LBC at Your Home. This is our kitchen table. These are our coffee mugs with actual coffee in them. And babe, I know we are all so used to kind of seeing you lead in the musical capacity. And so I want to be the first to kind of welcome you into my world a little bit. I don't know exactly what that world is called, maybe the world of talking or speaking. But now I know you're too embarrassed to share this with all those who are watching today, but you've been asking me for months if I would be willing to sing a duet with you.
Oh,
And
yes.
so here we are. I've finally given in and agreed to it, and so I'm ready when you are.
Okay, great timing.
But in all seriousness, I am honored to have you join me today. I've said this before publicly, but I want to use this opportunity to say it again. You, without your faithful support of me, LBC I don't think would exist today. And so much of what you do is behind the scenes that goes undetected by many people, but it's critical to what we do as a church. But that's not the primary reason that I asked you to join me today. Rather, I asked you to join me today because I want you to share a little bit of our story as a family as it relates to our daughter Hadley, who is living life with autism. Now, I suspect that many people who are watching today are at least somewhat familiar with Hadley and with our story. That's probably not the first time that they've heard us talk about that, but I wanted to invite you on today to just talk a little bit more in depth. And I hope in the process of doing that, will encourage others who maybe are watching, who are facing some sort of hard journey of their own. Now, I think people that know us know that we try not to make our journey with Hadley like the only thing that we talk about. We also try not to make it the identity of our church. But I really believe that by sharing a little bit more about our story and our journey, we hopefully invite others to step into the hard things of life with unwavering confidence that God is right there in the middle of those things. And so while some of what we will share today is certainly specific to our story and to our journey with Hadley, I know that we both want to generalize as much as we can as well, so that it intersects with other people who are also walking through their own challenges. So that, by way of introduction, and having said all of that, let's start by first let me ask you this. For those that perhaps don't know someone who is living with autism, maybe you could just describe briefly a little bit more of what that is and what it looks like for Hadley.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think there's the saying that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So while I describe what Hadley's day may look like, or me as her caregiver at home with her, that's very specific to just our circumstance. There are lots of friends that have that are impacted by autism, and their day may look vastly different. For us, I think our day is marked with a lot of music. There's always music playing. There are always books being read. Those are the things that she loves the most in life and bring her a lot of joy. I think there are a lot of really beautiful things in her day, and there are also hard things. There's a lot of structure. There's a lot of routine. I feel like most days she never stops thinking. And so by proxy, I also never stop thinking, trying to plan ahead to help her be successful in whatever scenario she's in. So getting ready for school looks probably a little bit more thought out than it would for some other children. She loves going to school, so that's probably the best part of her day. She goes in happily. Her day looks a little different because she's met by a parapro and they walk her in and they take good care of her while she's there. Just being real, some of her days are marked by some really hard moments of frustration because she has a difficult time communicating verbally. And so if she's wanting something or needing something, sometimes the frustration, the communication piece, we see that a little bit. And so then I'm guessing, or we're guessing, like, what is she needing in this moment? What is she wanting? I think days and nights, I feel like the 24-hour cycle for someone with autism actually looks different than others. And sleep challenges are a very real thing. But we're thankful for her doctors that have made that a little bit easier lately.
Yeah. So here in May, Hadley's going to turn 6, which means that you and I are probably coming up on like maybe 30, 35 years old, something like that. But let's back up to a few years ago when Hadley was first diagnosed. We suspected that was the direction we were heading, but then there came an official diagnosis, and that diagnosis came just a matter of days before we were going to stand on a stage at Christ Community, and they were going to make this announcement that we were stepping out and stepping away to go start a brand new church plant. What's going through your mind at that point is now we have these two massive new realities that are just kind of staring us in the face. What's going through your mind at that point?
I kind of felt like we were in a hurricane of just all the things. I felt like I wasn't even really sure what to think some of the time. I wasn't shocked or surprised by the diagnosis, but I think when I paired that in my head with the reality of what we were getting ready to endeavor on with the church, then it felt like that felt a little shocking. That did God forget that that's like what our schedule was? And so there were definitely some moments of questioning and fear. I think as a parent and there's a medical need, your first thought is, well, what about the insurance? And then I don't really know at what point, but I remember having this realization that God loved Hadley infinitely beyond what we do. And I also felt an unwavering confidence that he was going to equip us to be the best parents that she needed. And I also felt confident that God was calling us into church planting. And so somehow he was going to figure out the details.
Yeah. That was an overwhelming season in many ways. But here we are, 3 years later, and I guess it's 2 years, and God is still right there with us. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we talk often about is how this journey with Hadley has opened up our world to some new friendships and to some new amazing opportunities that we would have never otherwise known. Talk a little bit more about that.
I mean, it's hard to talk about without naming people that I see their faces when you ask that question. And I feel emotional just thinking about the people that God has brought into our lives, because it's just been such a huge gift. I feel like the community that we've established and the friendships that God has placed in our lives, they are sustaining, they're life-giving. And quite honestly, I feel like those friendships and that community is what will be one of Hadley's greatest interventions, so to speak. I think I read a book I don't remember the name of it at the moment, Unreasonable Hope, I think. But it was written by this guy and their daughter. She has some chronic disabilities and she's not verbal. And there's just a lot of heartache for their family. And I remember a part in their story, he was talking about, he met with a man out of town. And he was telling a little bit of the story of his daughter and her needs. And before the man flew out the next morning, he said, "Can you pick me up and take me to the airport? But I want to make a stop on the way." So they did. And they went to a tattoo parlor, which is kind of, he was he's kind of a little bit like, what are we doing? And they went in and he said, "What are we doing?" He said, "We're getting tattoos together." And he's like, "Why are we doing that?" And they got the letter G tattooed on their arms together. That's the first initial of their daughter's name. And he said, "I want you to know that your life is marked by the heartache that you feel every day. But I want you to know, as your friend, my life is now marked by your heartache as well. I want to share that with you." And I just thought, I wept as I read it, but then I was thinking, there are people, and mind you, we haven't had like a big tattoo party yet. But while we haven't done that, God has brought some incredible people that have said they have willingly chosen to let their lives be marked by the heartache, the struggle, the challenge that Hadley experiences and that we experience as a family. And so it's become a really sacred community, but it's also a scarred community. I think there's been a really neat way of connecting with other parents that are walking a similar road, or maybe it's a different diagnosis, or maybe, one lady that I've become friends with has a child with autism, but she's also buried a child. There's an incredible community when you allow yourself to feel those hard things and share them in vulnerability with other people and engage in each other's pain.
Yeah, as you share that, I'm just reminded that God redeems all things. And so while, of course, if we had been given the choice before Hadley was born, do you want to walk this road of raising a child who is differently abled? We probably would have said no. But at the same time, now on this side of it, I would say two things. One, our lives are so much richer because of it. And I honestly don't think that we would change it if we could, as crazy as that sounds. And so it's a reminder to me that God redeems all things. And so things that we might be inclined to go, this is bad, or this is evil, or this is horrible, God turns to good. And we've seen that a lot through what you just talked about, the community of people, a richness of friendships and a richness of just community that we would have never known otherwise. So we've been on this journey with Hadley now for a number of years. And one of the hardest parts of this journey is to not let our minds get too far down the road and to try and imagine, okay, what will life be like for her, or even us as a family when she's 12 or when she's 18 or when she's even 40 years old. What have you found helpful in terms of just kind of living in each day and taking it in each moment? And has there been a scripture maybe that's been particularly helpful for you?
Yeah, I think the only way to survive hard things is to stay present and to be in that day. And so I try not to do a lot of future casting or planning too far into the future, just admittedly. But I think the scripture that comes to mind, let's see, Psalm 37:23, it says, "The steps of the godly are directed by the Lord. He delights in every detail of their lives." And when I think about the future and I start to feel worry or anxiety or fear, I feel like the way that I combat that is by recalling the faithfulness of God in every detail. Because God has not just been a God of the big details. He has not just been the God over big tests or big appointments or, the right school or whatever it might be. He's been literally a faithful God in every detail. And so if he delights in those details, now and I can look back on that, then I don't have to be as worried about the future. Couple of fun stories that I think about with this verse in particular. When Hadley was little, walking was a challenge for her. You know, we did physical therapy, and literally getting her steps was a huge accomplishment when she acquired those steps for herself. And working with physical therapy and the orthopedic doctor, and she had those little inserts, remember? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember she had little silver tennis shoes.
Yeah,
and
they got worn a lot.
They got worn a lot, and she also had copper, I think. But we would frequently try and buy ahead in the next size of shoes because those worked really well for the inserts for fitting them. And I remember we had tried to find the size 11 silver tennis shoe, and they were discontinued at Target. And I remember thinking, like, these were the shoes that worked. And I went on eBay, like, in the middle of the night.
Which, by the way, who still uses eBay? But okay.
Well, I think I just typed it into the Google search and it pulled up eBay. So I clicked on it thinking, like,
sorry, Amazon.
eBay. And there was one brand new pair of these silver tennis shoes. And you guessed it, the size 11. And they were brand new. And they were not even marked up, which is kind of weird. I don't know why these people were selling them and not charging double, but God had already, like, reserved those shoes for her, which I just thought was cool. He cared about every detail of her steps. And a couple weeks ago, my mom and I were in Target or Walmart. Got to spread the love for shopping for shoes. We were in Walmart and we sashayed through the girls' shoe department and we found these. I was actually going to bring them out and I forgot them, but they're beautiful, really cute, like rainbow high top shoes. And we thought, oh, she's going to love these. They're really cute. So my mom got them and we held on to them. She was like, oh, I can't wait for her to see these. 2 days later, we had a follow-up appointment at Hanger Clinic. Mind you, she has not worn inserts for like probably a year. And so we went just for like a follow-up to check and see. And I kid you not, the orthopedic doctor said, well, I think we're going to give her some temporary inserts that are going to help support her ankle a little bit better. And I think actually it would be really great if you can keep an eye out for like a high top tennis shoe. We already had them. Like, it's just cool to see how it might not be like a massive miracle. Like, she still needed the inserts. She wasn't just suddenly healed one day. But God met the need. And I think sometimes we miss those like really commonplace miracles because we're looking for some massive sign or massive fix, make the problem go away kind of thing. When really God is providing, like the Israelites, like you get manna for today. So yeah. I think that helps.
I think along those lines, you know, one of my favorite passages from the Bible is in Matthew 6, and it's the words of Jesus when he's basically challenging us, don't worry about tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And he asks kind of these rhetorical questions. He says, look at the birds of the air, look at the lilies of the field. Do I not care for them? Are you not of more value than they are? And I feel like I hear Jesus ask me the same question sometimes, like, hey, Rob, look at the birds of the air, look at the lilies of the field. Do I not care for them? Is Hadley not of infinite more value than they are? And so, of course, I know as I think a bit down the road what this path will look like. I know, of course, God will care for her. But sometimes you do, admittedly, you just get blindsided by what the reality is in front of you each day as you kind of navigate the hardships of life. So, follow-up question, kind of along the same lines. One of the challenges that I know I face, and maybe you do as well, is not playing the comparison game in the sense of where Hadley's at versus maybe say other kids who don't face the same challenges. I mean, she goes to school every day with many kids who don't face those challenges. She even has playmates that come over who don't face those challenges. How do you find contentment in the road that God and the story that God has placed us in? And how do you protect yourself from falling into the really toxic kind of trap of comparing her story and our story to maybe say others?
That's a good question. First of all, I think the realization that there is truly no greater joy in my life or higher title that I could aspire to attain than being Hadley's mom. Like, hands down, that is the greatest joy in my life. And so when you see other kids that are maybe not facing the same challenges or experiencing those difficulties, there were days earlier on, I think, where I probably felt that a little bit more. One story that I love, I do a lot of reading. I read the book Hope Heals by Catherine and Jay Wolfe, and people are probably familiar with that. I don't know who may or may not be, but her story, she talks about, in this book, Catherine, she ends up in a wheelchair. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But she talks about the struggle initially with recognizing she was in a wheelchair. She would always have that chair, and feeling frustrated and questioning God and feeling kind of depressed and looking around and seeing all these other young moms that were not in wheelchairs and they could play with their kids and she couldn't. And I think it was at a Thanksgiving dinner that she says in the book, she experienced a moment where she understood that God had given her that wheelchair as a seat of honor. And that was her assignment, and it was a seat of honor. He had chosen her for that chair, and he had chosen the chair for her. And in a similar fashion, I feel like autism is part of Hadley's assignment, and as a family who loves her, that's part of our assignment as well. And I really want to steward that well, and I want us to teach her as she grows older how to steward that well and to see it as a gift of honor that God trusted her with. The same way that God trusted Catherine with the wounding that she experienced and being in the wheelchair, God has entrusted Hadley with this beautiful gift of autism that is very hard, knowing that she will be able to steward it well with his power in her. And I think, I learned, I had a benefit, I think, as we stepped into this journey because of my background in special ed and working as a special education teacher and loving those kids long before Hadley was ever born. And in a very good school district, the Vail School District, I learned from some really great special ed coworkers that to view all students and those that maybe have some extra challenges from what we call a strengths-based approach. And so to really approach life and approach learning new skills from a position of the strength. And so instead of always focusing on what's wrong or what's missing or what's deficient or what you need still, looking at what are the areas of strength and how do we use that to create progress and to create growth. And that's a really beautiful metaphor for any hard thing in life.
Yeah. And it does insulate you from wanting to play the comparison game, and which is really toxic. So one of my favorite things that you frequently remind me of, in fact, I shared it Monday night in our men's group, is you will say hard is hard, meaning it doesn't matter if it's autism or if it's a relationship issue or if it's a chronic illness or sexuality challenge or a job, a career situation, or some other hard is hard. And there's two things about that. Number one, we don't get to choose our hard. And number two, we don't get to quantify our hard. In other words, to say, well, my hard isn't as hard as their hard, or my hard is harder than their hard. Hard is hard, and it's real for whoever is walking that path. And so let me ask you, how has this hard road that we are walking as a family changed the way that you view and engage with other people?
Oh, I mean, it's so true. Hard is hard. And you can't play the comparison game there either, because there is no pain scale that determines who is hardest. And I think when we do that, we miss out on engaging with other people and allowing them to engage with us. I think one of the things that I've learned from that, I feel like my lens, I view other people through a wider lens of grace, because I've seen what it's like to have something that's really hard and quite honestly, it's misunderstood a lot. And it's kind of messy and uncomfortable, and maybe feels awkward for people sometimes. And so I know that that's our hard. And when I look at other people, I don't know what their heart is like. I don't want to be on the other end of misunderstanding it or judging something that I don't understand myself, that I don't know. I haven't walked that road. And so I want to be able to engage and step into that with people, and hopefully point them to the love and hope that's found in Jesus, because the love and hope of Jesus is the only fix for all of our hard things. Yeah. And I've seen, we've experienced this even a little bit, like if somebody misunderstands our scenario or they choose not to engage with us, it can actually add some sadness to our journey. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to add sadness to someone else's journey. I just want to point them back to Jesus.
Yeah. I think recently the three of us were out for a meal, and Hadley was just having just a difficult moment. It didn't last long, but it was a difficult moment, and you could feel the heads turning. You could feel the eyes glaring. It's like this sixth sense that you wish you didn't have, but you do. And to be honest, I understand that, because I can't speak for you, but for myself, like before Hadley was born, I probably would have reacted the same way. You see a child that's having a difficult time and you think to yourself like, gosh, what's wrong with that kid? Or why didn't their parent do something about that? So I just appreciate what you shared, because it's beautiful to see how God just kind of recalibrates you to see things a different way. And it helps you, helps us, I hope, to assume the best of others and to assume that they're doing the best they can in all circumstances, regardless of how much of the picture we may or may not see.
Yeah.
And know.
And it's funny that you bring up that story, because I don't even think that I shared this with you that day. But we knew somebody at the restaurant, and she was sitting in a different area. And when I stepped away with Hadley for a moment outside, just to kind of help her recalibrate a little bit, that lady came and found me and said, "Hey, I have some stickers in the car. Would she like some? Do you think it might be easier for her if we switch tables? We would be happy to." That kind of stepping in and loving without, the judgment or the whatever, it goes so much further.
Let's keep going. What would you say, these are maybe just, I don't know if they're easy answers for you or not. What is the best thing about being a mom to a child that is differently abled? And then maybe the follow-up question is, what's the most challenging thing?
The best thing is there's just so much to celebrate.
We cheer for a lot of
we cheer for
things.
Everything, things that I feel like a lot of people may take for granted just because, it happens in a typical fashion. Maybe it didn't come so easily in our home, and maybe it didn't arrive in the typical fashion. So when you hear, "I love you, mommy," or, a request for something she wants, or, you finally hit that toilet training success mark, which is challenging for everybody, but there is a next level. Yeah. Some of those things, there's just so much to celebrate. And I feel like we try and celebrate everything. So that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of joy. The biggest challenge, I think, is just the ache, the heartache, the agony of knowing you can't make life easier for her. You can't make everyone understand. You can't make everyone else be kinder. So it's this dichotomy of feeling tremendous heartache and grief some days, and then also just incredible joy. And another book I read, it's called Aching Joy. I think you read that one too. Some dear friends that walk a similar path with autism, they shared that book with us, and aching joy truly is the best way to describe it. That ache never goes away, ever. But the joy is just such incredible joy.
Yeah. I think many of the hardships in life are also usually the things that God uses to teach us the most. And so let me ask you this question. What have you learned about yourself through this journey with Hadley, and probably more importantly, what have you learned about God?
Well, usually when I'm trying to teach Hadley something or work on a new skill, I have learned that God is actually trying to teach me something in that moment. And God and Hadley are a pretty dynamic teaching duo in my life.
Might as well.
And so many things. The biggest thing I've learned about God is just He is in every single detail. He is forever faithful. Even when I have moments where I question Him or I vent a little anger or frustration to Him, He's big enough to handle that. And then He just keeps walking with us one step at a time. The most recent lesson I feel like I've learned came about last week in our physical therapy session, which is done through a computer screen. It's really crazy. But Hadley was sitting in my lap, and the physical therapist said, okay, we want to try and work on loosening up and relaxing her shoulders so that we can start to do some work with her arms and build some strength there. And she said, so we're going to have to relax them first, and then we're going to raise them and do the movements. And she said, I want you to hold her arm like this. And so I'm doing things like this with Hadley, and I'm sure you can tell where this is going, but the more that she resisted, the harder it was for me to help her.
Yeah.
And the more that she relaxed, then I was able to do what she needed. And then her strengthening had begun, and she didn't even know that she was being strengthened. And then, later that night, I was overthinking the day, which is typical. And
that never happens.
I was thinking through that experience, and I remembered there was a verse about friends holding up Moses' arms with a staff, and I couldn't really remember the whole story, so I went back and read it. And can I just read the little snippet? Okay, so It's in Exodus, and they've come through the Red Sea, and Israel's getting ready to go to battle, and so Moses sends Joshua out to fight. So Joshua's actually the one that's doing the fighting. He's in battle, and he has his own life is at stake. He's the one in battle. And Moses, this is Exodus 17, and it's in verse 9 and beyond. Moses says, tomorrow I will stand at the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did what Moses had commanded. He led his men out to fight. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of a nearby hill. As long as Moses held up the staff with his hands, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites gained the upper hand. Moses' arms finally became too tired to hold up the staff any longer. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on. Then they stood on each side, holding up his hands until sunset. As a result, Joshua and his troops were able to crush the army of Amalek, right? Okay. So I loved that because it's just such a beautiful picture of what God is wanting to teach me, that it's okay to ask for and accept help from other people. There are many days in my role right now, I am the one called to hold up Hadley's little arms while she fights her battles. And that is her battle to fight, but my responsibility is to hold up that staff of God over her life to ensure her victory in her battle. And just being totally honest, there's a lot of fatigue that comes with that. I get weary and tired, and God provides others along the way, an Aaron and a Hur, and maybe it's family or friends, maybe a him, or doctors, therapists, whatever it may look like, teachers, and they come and they support, they hold up the hands. And so God is teaching me that I have to be willing to ask for and accept help from others, so that I am strong enough to fight on her behalf.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that's a great sermon that maybe I'll borrow from you for down the road. Couple more questions and we'll wrap up. Certainly there are some watching today who are facing their own hard journey. They have some hard thing in their life. What would you say to someone who maybe just feels disappointed in the hand that they've been dealt? Like, this wasn't the life that I imagined. This wasn't the life that I signed up for. Mm-hmm. What do you say to someone who feels that discouragement today?
First, I would say I'm sorry, because it's hard. And then I think I would say it's okay to feel all of the range of feelings, the disappointment, the anger, even. I mean, I've had my moments with God where I kind of let him have it a little bit and say, this is how I'm really feeling. And then in his love, he just kind of helps me move forward. I would say a couple of things. First, I would say ask for and accept help. Whatever your hard may look like, you shouldn't do it alone. No one should experience the hard things of life in isolation. So kind of like the story from Exodus, find people that will hold up your arms when you're weary. And maybe they'll provide a stone for you to sit on. So the metaphor, I feel like, is just so rich, because those people will literally hold up your arms when you're weary. They will come and give you the strength that you need to do the job, because Moses was the one that had to hold the staff up, right? But they might also provide you with resources, like a stone to sit on. And I would say there are some really practical, just kind of basic things like doctors and medicine and therapy and rehab and counseling, and I don't know, the list goes on, right? Of really just tangible resources. But then there's also what I was talking about, like that community. Aaron and Hur were with Moses. They went up that hill with him. They stayed with him. They anticipated the need and they met the needs. So I would say find an Aaron and Hur, or him. Find people that are willing to step in to your hard thing and allow their life, people that will willingly say, I choose to have my life maybe inconvenienced, maybe whatever, because I want to be marked by your hard thing in your life. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen that with family and friends that have said, your journey is now our journey. We're in it together. Right. So ask for and accept help, I think, is huge. And the second thing I would say is to ask God to reframe your pain and reshape your perspective. Because there are days when it's really easy to just want to kind of sit down in our misery of whatever it may be. And when I do that, I feel like I can sense myself sinking pretty quickly. But when you reshape your perspective, kind of like Catherine did with her wheelchair, it was still a wheelchair, but she reshaped her perspective to view it as a seat of honor. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's really helpful. So I would encourage people to do that with whatever the hard thing is. Mm. Our battles aren't going to be the same, because we don't all fight the same battles, and we don't even fight similar battles the same way. But if we asked anybody, what is the hardest, most painful thing in your life, anyone would be able to quickly identify what that is. And, it's important to keep our perspective open to other people when we look up from our own hard circumstance and we engage with other people in their hard circumstance. We find community, first of all, but we also are reminded that other people are hurting. And that perspective, it helps to remind us of, there's something beyond just the pain that I feel in this moment. And so I think that's really important. I think that we can reframe and reshape by entering in to other people, by blessing other people. And we can do that also by practicing gratitude. You know, on hard days, I mean, we might be in the middle of a really hard circumstance, but if I force myself and I remind myself, be grateful, I can honestly think of like 100 things about our journey with Hadley and autism that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, so true. So I feel like a good place to end and to wrap up would just be to ask you, just, is there one key scripture that's been so helpful for you on particularly hard days? It's just kind of carried you along.
Can I cheat and give two? One is short. There's a verse in Hosea that talks about God leading us into the wilderness because he will speak tenderly to us there. So sometimes when I feel particularly dry and deserted and like we're in the wilderness, I remember that is a place that God is able to speak very tenderly. And so we can feel his love, I think, to a deeper degree than we would, you know, if things were all just really great all the time. Yeah. The second is in Isaiah 43, 1 and 2. It says, "The Lord who created you says, 'Do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine. When you go through deep waters and great trouble, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you.'" Then if you skip down just a little bit further, it says, "You are precious to me. You are honored, and I love you. Do not be afraid, for I am with you." And I just feel like that pretty much sums it up.
I think so too. I mean, it's great promises of God that really speak into those hard moments. So, babe, thank you for sitting down with me today. My purpose in bringing you on is, for whatever reason, in this season, God has tagged us to help lead Living Branch Church. And it may not be us in 20 years, but it is today. And yet we are also simultaneously walking this journey with Hadley, and those two roads intersect. And as those who are part of those who are helping to lead Living Branch Church, modeling transparency and authenticity is so important to us, because I know that we both want LBC to be a place where people can bring their hard things and find love and find acceptance, and most importantly, find the healing power of the gospel. And I just can't even imagine where we would be as a couple, as a family, without Jesus. And life is hard, and the journey that we are on is hard, but Jesus gives hope, and that's the hope that we want to radiate out from Living Branch Church into our community. You know, one of the 4 values that we have as a church is that of the table, as we like to say, gathering often and inviting all people to find a place in authentic community. Well, the word authentic is so important to us because, and one of the key scriptures that we leaned on for that particular value is 1 Thessalonians 2:8, which says, "Because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well." And that's what we want LBC to be all about. We want to share the gospel, which is the good news that Jesus heals and he saves and he redeems those hard things in our lives. But we also want to share our lives as well.
Yeah, and that a hard journey can be a very beautiful journey.
Right,
still.
and I hope that's been a little bit of what we've been able to do today. And so I want to thank you again for joining me. We will save the duet for another time. That'll give you a little more time to practice.
Next time.
And I know that this is a tough corner of your heart to open up, but I hope that it's been an encouragement to not only to you, but to those who will share in this time with us. And so I just want to say thank you again for joining us at home. You can join us now as our worship team leads us in one final song.
Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, he to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a day. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Oh, lest I adore your name above all else, tune my heart to sing your praise above all else. I adore your name above all else, tune my heart to sing your praise.